Okay, I have put this PowerPoint video together to help with question 2 of the AE03K written assessment. Okay, so the question is, a pre-engaged starter motor's hold-on coil in the solenoid has gone open circuit. 3 marks for each correct answer. Okay. Well, before we go ahead and answer the question, I'm just going to show you some other bits and pieces to refresh your memories about what the question is about, really. So here is a picture of a pre-engaged starter motor, and just to remind you, if you've forgotten, this is the solenoid, this unit here, and inside the solenoid, what you need to remember is that there are 2 windings, and we put when we turn the ignition key or push the starter button, current is supplied to both of those windings. It creates a magnetic field which pulls a plunger back, and there is a lever effectively down through here that seesaws or pivots on a point here. So as that plunger moves back, this pinion gear moves forward and engages with the flywheel. So that's why this is called a pre-engaged starter motor, because the solenoid engages the pinion with the flywheel before the motor itself starts to work. Okay, next slide just shows you another starter motor, but it's been sectioned so you can see those windings inside the solenoid. So that's what I wanted to think about. And as I say, there's the plunger actually, and it's going to slide backwards. And there's my lever bar pivoting on this point here. So as that plunger moves backwards, this assembly here is going to push forward and push this pinion gear forward into mesh. Okay, so the next slide, it will be useful as well, hopefully. So this is a circuit diagram of the solenoid itself. And as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 windings, the hold-in winding and the pull-in winding. Now, when we connect our ignition switch, or when we switch the switch on, push the start button, 12 volts from our battery, 12 volts will flow through the closed switch into the small terminal on the solenoid, and from there it divides and goes into both of the 2 windings. Now, if we follow the hold-in winding, it's going to go through the hold-in winding and go straight to earth. So it earths out through the body of the solenoid. The other flow is through the pulling winding. So if you go back to this point here and follow it through, 12 volts will flow through the pull-in winding, goes down through the side, through the pull-in winding, and out through this lower terminal, which is the bigger terminal on or one of the bigger terminals on the solenoid, and it goes into the starter motor itself and through the windings of the starter motor, and then eventually gets to earth once it's gone through the starter motor as well. So both of these windings will create a magnetic field which pulls this plunger over, pulls it the other way, pulls the plunger that way and bridges these 2 contacts. So now the current from my battery will flow through this large terminal on the solenoid, down through this plate here, and then out and through to the starter motor itself. Now, at this point, it's important to understand that if I've got 12 volts flowing through here, I'm going to have 12 volts down at this point. So I've got 12 volts on this end of the pull-in winding, and you also need to remember I'll have my 12 volts at this end of the pull-in winding. So if I've got 12 volts here at this end and 12 volts here at this end, if the voltage is equal on both sides or both ends of the pull-in winding, no current will flow through the pulling winding. So we will only have current flowing through the holding winding. So just to summarize, hopefully you get that. When you first connect or push the start button, turn your key, whatever it is on your car, current will flow through both of the windings initially. That creates two lots of magnetic field that push that plunger over. As soon as that plunger has made contact, then the pulling winding stops working because it'll have 12 volts on both ends. So at that point, it's just the holding winding that is holding it in place. Okay, I think you should have that. Hopefully that helps. So let's just move on and bring in the next question. I'll bring in the question. Okay, so back to the question. It says a pre-engaged starter motor's holding coil on the solenoid has gone open circuit. So this holding winding has broken. It's open circuit. Okay, the question is, what would the symptoms be? So what's going to happen when we connect our switch here, close the switch here, current will only flow through the pulling winding because this is open circuit, so no current will flow through the holding winding. So if current flows through the pulling winding, that's fine. That creates a magnetic field. That will cause the plunger to be pushed over. But as soon as it makes contact, remember there's 12 volts on this end, and the 12 volts on this end of the pulling winding means that no current flows. So it flows initially, creates a magnetic field, pushes that plunger over, but then as soon as it's got over there, the current stops flowing, so the magnetic field collapses and the plunger will shift backwards. As soon as it's broken the circuit, current starts to flow again. So what's going to happen is this plunger just keeps going backwards and forwards really rapidly. In fact, the term we use is it chatters because it makes a chattering noise, chattering backwards and forwards. I've just answered that question for you. Okay, how would we verify that that was the fault? How would we know whether this has gone open circuit? Well, I'm not going to tell you here, but you need to test. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but what you need to do is to test for continuity of this holding winding. All right, so how would you do that? And once you'd identified the problem, the next question is what would be the recommended course of action? Okay, once we've verified that that holding winding is broken, what would we do? Well, the reality is we can't strip these down. These are, you guys have taken a solenoid apart, all right, but I'm sure you are well aware that you can't take a winding out and replace one single winding. So what would you do? Well, I'll leave that for you to decide, okay? Okay, I hope this helps. I'm going to log off now. Stay safe.